Welcome to Standing in the Sunlight with Cynthia Rose. We are all on an ever-unfolding unique journey. Join Cynthia Rose as she begins her unique perspective to all that is meaningful. Topics and personalities that support your path, bringing inspiration and passion and heart-centered ways to live a more fulfilling life. A down-to-earth and uplifting sharing of what it means to be spiritual, creative, and living life to the fullest by standing in the sunlight. Born an intuitive medium, Cynthia Rose is also an ordained minister, singer, astrologer, educator, and writer. She has studied the intuitive and healing arts for over 40 years. Rise up and stand in your sunlight now with Cynthia Rose.
Well, hello there. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm so happy to be here with you. And if you're listening on playback, then welcome. Thank you for being here. Just a couple of things. You can always get a hold of me or communicate with me on Facebook, Cynthia Rose Medium. And I'm also on YouTube. I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Cynthia Rose Medium. And also, I am on Twitter and Instagram, not quite as much, but I'm there. So you can get hold. And of course, cynthiarosemedium.com. If I can help you in any way, I would love to. Today, I am actually up in Bellingham, Washington, and I'm so excited. I have a guest that's very special to me, Bob Trask. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Thank you very much, Cynthia Rose.
I'm so happy to have you here. I just want to tell the listeners you're the minister at Bellingham Unity, which will give information for that at the end of the show. But you have had such an interesting life, and I thought it might be nice to tell the listeners a little bit about how I first met you. I did a course that you taught in Bellingham when I was 18 called Hiatus. Could you share a little bit about that?
Hiatus is an acronym for acceptance, respect, affection, and support. Acceptance, respect, affection, and support. If you think about that for a minute, you see that if I treat anyone, even if it is some seemingly an enemy, with acceptance, accept them exactly the way they are, and then respect them and have some affection for them or for their mind or for how they are, and then support them and support their visions, then I become really delicious to them, and of course then they begin to treat me in the same way. So we really think that that's a powerful way to have relationships. So that was the kind of the beginning of the Hiatus seminar series that you took. And what you went through was a 5-day, very intensive program, and you were outstanding in that program, incidentally, although not many years ago.
It seems like a lifetime ago, but I remember you saying the first day, "Well, this will change your life," and boy, and I also remember you saying, "As you leave here, don't forget that." And I do remember going back home and feeling like my world had been altered, and now I'd been plopped back in my world, but my consciousness had shifted.
You know, there are over 500,000 graduates in 13 countries around the world, and some of them have become movie stars or famous authors or politicians or whatever. But being with you in the last few days has been really special to me, because though you have become widely known and very, very successful at what you do, you remain the sweet and humble 18-year-old girl. You have not changed a bit in that regard.
Oh, thank you. That really touches my heart. And just for the listeners, I was up at Unity of Bellingham. I did a demonstration of mediumship and private readings up there, and got to listen to and spoke a little bit at a service you had last Sunday, which was lovely too.
And what happened on Sunday when Cynthia was giving a demonstration, we had a very large crowd, and she was just sort of picking people out of the crowd that had something, or people in the crowd were putting their hands up that had something that they wanted to talk about, and then she was relating information from the spirit world to them, which changed a lot of lives. And toward the end of the show, I'll tell you what happened to me, because it was astounding. It was astounding. For all the things that I've gone through in my life, this was one of the most memorable and the most shocking in a way, but life transforming. So I'm anxious to get to that.
Oh yeah, thank you. And I have to say, I thought I was finishing, and I know I'd said something to the crowd about. I think someone came up and cued me to say, "Okay, it's been a couple of hours. We're finishing up now." And then I don't know what happened. Whoosh! I just went on another ride.
Well, it was astounding because you were finishing with someone, and as you were finishing, shall I just go tell the story? Does it?
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
So,
Let's.
So when I was a boy, I'm part of Native American, born in New Mexico, and I never knew my father, and my mother and us were really, really poor, very poor. And interestingly enough about being very poor is that I didn't really know we were poor. I mean, that was just how life was, which is really a blessing. The kids that are poor don't usually go around saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm poor," because it's just the way life is. And but Mom got married again to my stepfather, and she had several other kids, so eventually there were 6 of us, but there wasn't enough money, so I was working from the time I was very young to help support the family. The one saving grace in my life was a friend, a cousin that was born just a few months before me, just a few months after me. Gary was like Gary and I were 2 halves of the same person. We grew up together. We never fought. We never argued. We were constantly concerned and considered about the other one. Our love for each other was pure and deep, and it was an unusual kind of love between 2 boys. We both loved girls. We both loved fishing. We both loved baseball. We both loved doing crazy things, taking big risks, diving into deep water, doing nutso things. But there was a bond between us that neither one of us felt like we could live without. And when we were young teenagers, we cut our arms and tied them together and bled together so we could become blood brothers. And we lived like that. And then one Christmas, we went back to New Mexico, back to the high country, and I was to celebrate my 15th birthday. Gary and his mom and dad and me were in the high country, and on the morning of my birthday, he and I took rifles. We were in the big house on the old family property, high in the mountains of New Mexico, deep snow, and we went out hunting, he and I. And we came to a log not very long after we started walking, and we cleared the snow off of the log wide enough so that we could sit down side by side and talk. And all around us was the forest, heavy branches draping with snow and a dead silence and the beauty of a pristine winter. And Gary, who you must know this about Gary, I was always sort of philosophical and abstract and always sort of looking for what's behind that or what is the true meaning of that. Gary had zero metaphysical, philosophical, spiritual thoughts in his mind or in his body. Everything was about baseball and girls and fishing, period. And so when I would be talking to him and I'd say, "God, Gary, what do you think about this?" And he would just look at me with his glazed over eyes and say, "Why do you do that? Why do you go there?" That day, as we sat on that log, he said, "Bob, I want to tell you something." And I said, what? He said, if ever it should happen that one of us accidentally shoot the other one and kill him, it has to be you that shoots me. And I was stunned. I said, what are you saying? Why are you even saying that? Gary, what are you talking about? He said, you need to know that. I could never live with it, but you could. You could go on. I said, Gary, listen to me. This is crazy talk. This will never happen, ever happen. And if it did happen and you shot me, 6 months, you'd be over it. You'd be sad for a while. You'd get over it. You'd have a life. He said, no, I wouldn't. You don't understand. I wouldn't. It'd have to be you. We got up from the log and hiked on through the forest and up over the top of a mountain. And then we were heading back toward the ranch. It was toward midday. We came down off the mountain and came to a creek. And the creek was frozen over except a little patch of open water right in the very center. So we walked out on the ice, and I laid down and took a drink. And then I stood up, and he was going to lay down and take a drink. And so he lay down and laid his gun beside him. And as he was laying down to take a drink, I, looking down the creek, saw a crow flying up the creek toward us. And being a typical stupid boy, thought, well, I guess I'll shoot the crow. So I pulled my gun up and took a shot, and I either missed the crow or knocked a feather out, but it kept flying, and I said, Gary, there's a crow, I'm going to get him. And I put another shell in and pulled the gun up. And as I pulled the trigger, and this is one of the longest moments of my life, as I pulled the trigger, his head came up in front of the barrel, the back of his head, as he stood up to look down the creek toward that crow. And as he stood up and the back of his head came up in front of the gun, I saw it, I knew it, but my finger was moving, but I couldn't stop it. The whole thing was in slow motion, and I couldn't stop it. I shot him dead center in the back of the head, and of course he fell to the ice, and there was blood gushing out of his head, and I put my finger over the hole in the back of his head to stop the bleeding, and strangely enough, it did stop the bleeding, but what I didn't know is it was continued to bleed inside. And I gave him artificial respiration for as long as I could. And I tried to find some way to carry him or slide him back to the ranch, but there was a lot of brush and brambles, and I couldn't, and the creek was not just a flat creek. There was all kinds of things growing on it and over it, so I couldn't just go down the creek. And so I kept giving, but every time I stopped doing artificial respiration, he stopped breathing. And we were Catholics. I was a Catholic at the time, and he always wanted to be. So I baptized him, and I just kept telling him, hang on, hang on. But as long as I gave him artificial respiration, he breathed. But as soon as I stopped, he stopped breathing. And finally I realized that I had to go for help, so I took off all my clothes except for my Levi's. I put my shoes under his head, covered him all over with my clothes, and took off running down the creek and through the snow back to the ranch, which was quite a few miles away. And when I got to the ranch, they came, it was a long story about all the craziness when I came in all bloody, and his mom and dad were crying, and just it was an awful, awful scene. And I took them back up the creek. They took jeeps, and then they loaded Gary up and took him to the hospital in Albuquerque, which was 60 miles away. Well, he was dead on arrival. And because of the way the wound was in the back of his head, they thought maybe that it had been deliberate, so they asked that I be locked up. So I spent the afternoon and night until the next day in a solitary cell. And the next day, a district attorney heard my confession and realized that it was, in fact, an accident, so they let me go.
Yep. Did we just lose our guest? Okay. That's weird. Should we maybe go to break and then just come back? Okay. All right.
Where did we leave off, do you think, Cynthia?
We're going to go to break now. So you're saying that they realized it was an accident?
Okay.
And then so we'll just have a little break and then we'll come back.
Okay.
That was weird.
Yeah.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. OMTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Some knowledge belongs to us and us alone. The way our girlfriends walk, talk, touch their hair. Details that only a sister can know about her girls. But what about our other girls? The ones we carry with us every day. Our bond with our sister girls gives life. But knowing your breasts can save it. Go to knowyourgirls.org for the facts you need on breast health. Brought to you by Susie G. Coleman and the Ad Council.
Well, we're back, and I think we had a little spirit interference. You can blame it on Mercury retrograde, but I think it was a spirit influence saying, here I am. So
I think it was me.
It was you, okay.
Can't get too serious about life. It just screws up all of the technical stuff.
That's true. So that's true. So we were talking about how you had been they left you by yourself overnight in a cell until they realized it was truly an accident, is I think where we left off.
And over the next years it was difficult, but the most difficult part for me was losing my buddy. The fact that I took his life was, of course, I was deeply ridden with guilt and shame and self-loathing, but also I had lost a half of my life. And I went on and lived my life, and because of the incredible impact that had on me, my mind opened to seeing more and more and more of those abstract, philosophical, I didn't then know they were spiritual factors, like seeing trees in the forest, and instead of seeing the trees, seeing the space between the trees and feeling almost an echo of something alive in that space. And that continued to happen for me until I was a sea captain in 1976, I think, 75 or 76, 74. I was a sea captain, and I had a boat that we took people out on explorations and diving into places they couldn't otherwise go, seamounts and coral reefs and places in the ocean where no one knew about them or could get to them. And we put people down on these exotic places, and it was a wonderful experience, and I was having a good life as a sea captain. But in my entire life, Gary was never back with me. Now, interestingly enough, my mom had died, and my mom came back to me, and we spent time together. I mean, she really came to me. It wasn't a dream. And we spent time together, and she went to my sister. And so I had a communication with people on the other side, but never with Gary. Never. And at one time I had a dream, and Gary came to me in the dream, and he was so real, and he really wanted to communicate with me, but I wanted no part of him. It scared me to death. I couldn't understand why it was so frightening, this guy that was so important to my very being, why I was so afraid of him now. And that went on and on and on. And my whole life was like, I was like a car with two wheels. I was never right. And there was a hurricane that came into the Sea of Cortez when I had the ship on the sea, down in the Sea of Cortez. And it's quite a long story, and I won't go into it, but I had 5 options when the storm hit. And the 5 options, if I did each one of those 5 options in order, if the first one failed, then I could go to the second one. If that failed, I could go to the third one. And they were things like get out of the harbor, then get to this big sea buoy, and then get to this pier, and then get tucked into this cove. All of those things failed. The seas were, this wind was screaming so loud you couldn't hear if you were yelling into each other's ears. It was so loud. There were things like boats whipping through the air past us. It was dark as night, the screaming of the wind and the waves towering as high as a 4-story building, crashing into us. And all of the boats around us that we saw all sank. We watched people drown, and there seemed that there was no chance for us. And I went up to the wheelhouse to go inside, and my second in command was inside, and he had his head in the radar, and I bounded on the door and tried to open it, but the wind was blowing against the door so hard I couldn't pull it open, and I was yelling to him. And finally I turned around and put my back up against the wall, and I said, God, please help me. Now I must tell you that with Gary dying and with the poverty and all of the many tragedies in my life, I had always prayed to God, God, please help me. And I saw God, the man with the robe and the beard, and I saw him looking at me and doing nothing. And so I had finally just left that. I refused to pray. I refused to talk to God. Absolutely refused. When I turned around and put my back up against the bulkhead on the wall and said, God, please help me, a knowledge came into my brain. Bob, you've been doing this for years, thinking that there's a God out there that will help you, and that you now know that's not true, and it's time to acknowledge it. And I knew in my heart of hearts that God did not exist. At that moment I knew it. And when I knew it, when I finally knew it, I felt myself surrounded, completely surrounded by a warm feeling. It was almost as though arms were being wrapped around me from behind. And even in the midst of the storm, it felt quiet. I didn't see any lights or see anybody, but I felt this incredible peace that went all the way through me, and my fear was gone. And this message came into my mind and said, now if you'll just stay out of the way, I'll help you through this. I must tell you that in that moment, that presence that was around me, I knew at that moment that it had been there my entire life, but I had ignored it. And I remember now, thinking back about that the first commandment is, I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not have strange gods before me. And the I am is the I am that talked to Moses. The I am that talked to Moses when he gave him the 10 Commandments, who talked to Moses when he sent him down to free the Israelites. It wasn't a man in the sky. It was the powerful presence of the all-knowing mind of the creative presence, the power of the one God. And I knew then what that meant. So I said, so then this message said to me, this is funny, said, okay, go on in the wheelhouse. And I said, I can't. I just tried. I can't open the door. And this message said, thought you were going to stay out of So I reached out, of course, and just opened the door. And what happened then was just a series of miracles that could not happen in seafaring ways. Could not happen. We only had one propeller. We had three big propellers on the boat. The right side propeller was the only one left. So when I tried to go forward, we would only go in circles. Regardless of that, we were able to find a pier that was not on the charts and get all of the people off the boat, up the pier and into this little house that was just at the head of the pier, a little brick building with cement sacks on the floor, and everybody went inside and sat down and laid down on the cement sacks. And I had the roster with me, and I called roll, and I swore to God I saw two people wash over the side earlier in the storm. I called the roll, and everybody answered. I then took my flashlight and called roll again and made sure I saw each face. And when I saw that everyone was there, I just broke down and cried, because this could not happen. Everything that happened was unworldly and beyond the pale. Nothing like this is possible. It isn't possible for us to have gotten out of that storm with only one propeller. It isn't possible for us to have gone around to the right side as we did with only one propeller that tried to make us go to the left. It wasn't possible that we could have gotten through all those seas. It wasn't possible that those people that washed over the side, in fact, did not wash over the side. It wasn't possible that we could find that little pier, and at the head of that pier there would be a little shack that was safe from the storm, inside of which the whole crew and my passengers would be safe. And that changed my life entirely. Completely changed my life. And I started doing the work that I'm doing now, which is teaching other people what I know about the presence, the great presence of Great Spirit in our lives, and that we are here for a purpose. We each have a purpose, and we can screw around and not do our purpose and get a job job that's not our job, and do things to dissuade our minds and keep us from being who we're supposed to be. But that's not who we are. Each one of us came into this being, into this incarnation, as an incarnation of the great mind of God, an incarnation, an individual wave on the great sea of the mystery of the one creative power. Each one of us are a complete representation of God, each one of us. And we come, each one of us, with our own individual fingerprints, eye prints, neural prints, voice prints, ears, all totally separate and different of all the trillions of people that may ever live. And each one of us have our own purpose. And my purpose, I'd been trying to be famous. I was a singer and an actor and a comedian, and I'd done radio and TV, and it was like, let me be famous, because there was a hole in me that I needed to fill with that fame. When I got through with that hurricane, all I wanted to do was serve. All I wanted to do was be as humble as possible and be a servant of the light. And then my life opened up and started flowing. And it was marvelous, marvelous, marvelous. I loved it. I did wonderful things. I just never thought that I could touch as many lives. Hundreds of thousands of lives around the world. I'm a high school dropout. I've got several books in print and a new novel coming out in a couple of months. How could that possibly be? No more possible than getting out of that hurricane. But if I'm living my life's purpose, and I'm allowing the spiritual guidance of Great Spirit to be my leader, to guide me, then all these miracles happen. And there's no thing I or you can't accomplish. But still, Gary and I were not together. And I can tell you, every week of my life, many times every day of my life, I thought of Gary. And I thought of that day. And I thought of him rotting in a grave while I'm out living my life with my bullet in his head. How many millions of times I've gone through that. And then you, Cynthia, came to Unity Bellingham on Sunday, this last Sunday, And after the service, you had a workshop, and you were asking people, I have a spirit talking to me about this. Does that relate to anybody? And somebody would put their hand up, and then you would channel through that, and they would go back, and it would be pertinent to someone in their life that needed to hear a message. And it was beautiful, and people were crying, and their lives were being transformed, and it was beautiful. And I was sitting next to my wife, Mary, and then you said, okay, I think I'll take one more. So you took one more. And you had told me earlier, I'll only go to 2:45 because this is very tiring work. Now it was 2:45 and you decided to take another. So I thought, wow, I wonder why. But before I went to that conference, Cynthia, I said to Gary, listen, I know you and I aren't talking, and I know we're on the outs, and I know I've got my part in that. But if we're going to make this thing work, if you want to clean it up, I'm going to tell you right now, this is your chance. You come to me today through Cynthia, or we'll just hang it up. But I'm telling you, this is it. I didn't have any energy in it. I just wanted him to know that I loved him and I still wanted to do that, but I didn't know how to do it. So there's Cynthia. There you are up there. And you said to the okay, we'll take one more person. And you took that person. And then you got toward the end, and I think you were really finished what you were just saying the last few words, and then you stopped and you said, wait a minute. And then meanwhile, I'm saying to Gary, see there, you passed your chance, huh? See what you could have said? Yeah, it's okay with me. Hey, that's fine. And then you said, wait a minute. Something's going on here. This is a Catholic thing. Something about Catholicism, deep Catholicism here. Anybody here with Catholic, something Catholic? And what lady raised her hand and said, I think it's me, but you talked to her for a minute and said, no, that's not it. It's something else about Catholics, a Catholic something. Well, what you didn't know, Cynthia, is that not only was my uncle an archbishop, and that several of my uncles and cousins are priests and nuns, but that I actually went through the seminary, or was in the seminary, studying to be a Franciscan priest. So, yeah, I served Mass. Yes, I was completely involved in the Catholic thing. But while you were saying that, my heart was beating so hard. And Mary, sitting next to me, said, put your hand up. Put your hand up. I said, no. I was so frightened. I was so afraid.
And you know what? I don't always remember that. But what I remember is that I had this Catholic priest, but I didn't know the title, but I knew he was more than a priest. He had this position of authority, and I knew it was this whole world, and I couldn't stop the entrancement of like him saying, I'm not going anywhere. And I remember thinking, nobody's taking him, but he's not leaving, so I guess I'm not done. And I just kept holding this priest.
Well, you were like 20 minutes past the time you said that you would go, and everyone else was finished. And you just kept going on, and you kept motioning with your hands. There's this ritual, Catholic, whoever it is, they do this Catholic ritual. There's a Catholicism. You kept going, and then finally you said, and there's guns or gun. What's that have to do with it? And of course my heart just broke, and I'll be crying here in a minute. And then Mary said, put your hand up. And I said, oh, okay. So I put my hand up, and she said, do you have this? And I said, my uncle is an archbishop. And she said, oh, because I didn't tell you the rest of the whole Catholic thing in my life. But she said, oh, okay. And so you talked for a minute, and I talked, and then I said, what does the gun or guns have to do with the Catholic thing? And you said, because someone shot and killed someone. And of course that was it. That was it for me. That was it. You know, the tears were running down my face, and then you said the thing that changed my life forever, and I will forever be indebted for you for this. You said you had an agreement. I'm being told we had an agreement. And then I remembered, I remembered sitting on the log with Gary and him saying, if one of us ever shoots the other one, it has to be you, because you can go on and do something with that. And and we had an agreement. And I shut him out. He didn't shut me out. I shut him out. And oh my God, the night after that was a night that all the wounds were open again, and I lay in absolute grief until about 4 o'clock in the morning. At what point Gary said, "Okay, so we've done that, right? We've done that. We've done the grieving, we've done the crying, we've done all that, right? So now let's get back on the horse, and let's get this stuff done, okay? Let's let that go, and let's get back on the horse." And since then, Cynthia, my heart is so full. I've got Gary back inside of me, and oh my God, I just can't tell you. It's just the most marvelous, wonderful gift in my life ever, ever, ever. And I'm so deeply thankful to you for that. Thank you.
It's so welcome. I'm so grateful that you took the message and that it came through and that I was able to be there. And it's always curious to me that some things like they're so powerful. But I think I thought, was it Jerry and then it's Gary. Yeah, it's Gary. I always find that Gary and Jerry are two names that I can mix up, and I don't know why that is, but sometimes a name pops in and it's just clicked. The first contact, I think that day, it was exactly the name that you get. Who knows why it goes that way? Nobody knows. But it was if I had known that, it's interesting how the spirit world works, because if I had known, if they had said go direct to Bob, I would have been, I don't know, because you were a mentor to me. But I wasn't. Yes. But I wasn't in my regular mind. I was in my medium mind, as we say. But yes. And I see we're getting cued for our last break. So we're having a wonderful time talking with Bob Trask, and we'll be back. Get a glass of water, stretch your legs. See you in a minute.
Free your mind with OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free, ascendinghearts.com.
Tune in to The Practical Intuitive, Mind, Body, Spirit for the Real World with me, host Robin Fritz, Mondays at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 Eastern. I'll cover personal and business intuition, animal communication, mediumship, space clearing, past life regression, shamanic insights, energy healing, soul choice, and more, all to help you tap your own intuitive and healing skills. No ifs, ands, or buts.
GTG, BRB, OMW, be there in a few. You may think that these kinds of texts are fine because of their length, and you can easily send them at a stoplight. But no, answering one text can take your attention away from the road for 5 seconds. And traveling at 55 miles an hour, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Make good decisions, don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
Okay, we're back, and something just came to me, Bob, when we were talking, that it was my heart was so touched. I spent the last couple of days before that service just a lot of meditation and in my way of prayer, and I'd been shown that there was some agreement between you and I. But I wasn't really clear what that meant. And I thought, well, okay, so maybe that's why he's bringing me here. I don't know. Well, I just didn't know what it meant. I'm going to sneeze. Oh, okay. That's funny. It went away. So, 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 you know, it just occurred to me when you say it changed your life. I mean, you changed my life when I was 18. And here I was, this empathic little girl that felt so much that I would say things to my mother that the spirit world would tell me when I was 3 and 4, and she'd say, "How do you know that?" And it would freak her out. And I just felt so, I just felt things so deeply. I didn't know how to handle it. I had personal work to do. So I could separate, you know, if somebody was feeling, you know, when in the church on Sunday, I was like, oh, somebody's knee is hurting. Because for a second, my knee got really painful. And then I went, oh, okay. And then away it went. But when I was younger, if that would happen, it would stay with me because I didn't know how to handle it. So, and then of course, Mary came and said something to me about whose knee was hurting. I went, oh, okay. So I learned to handle this, but it has been a lifetime of learning. But that initiation has been very key people in my life that have helped me, and you were instrumental at that time of my life to put me on a path that gave me some tools to work with. So I've been forever grateful.
And I'm so honored. I'm so honored. You know, Cynthia, the work that you do now, reaching out to people around the world and talking to them about spirit, about common sense spirituality, not woo-woo spirituality, but common sense spirituality, the reality of God as us in our presence, reminds me that there's so many mythologies and myths going on that are untrue, that guide people. For instance, people follow Jesus, but to follow Jesus is to know that Jesus did not come to teach us to be Christians. He was not himself a Christian. He did not come to teach us to be Christians. He came to teach us to be Christs. Buddha didn't come to teach us to be Buddhists, but to be Buddhas. And the work that you're doing and the other colleagues that you have on this station are making a difference in the world, because you're a watering hole for the spirits that are thirsty for truth. And there's so few watering holes in the world right now. And the people who are listening to us right now and the people who tune in regularly to this station, they're people who know that there's a truth beyond that which they can see in their brain mind, that they can only see in their heart mind. But they don't have anyone. For instance, when you were growing up and you were a child and you could see things and know things that were just quite obvious to you, and your mother or other people would say, how do you know that? And they became suspicious or even frightened. There's so many people listening today that are going through that same experience, and they have nowhere to go and no one to talk to who really understands them. And that's why you are doing such a marvelous work. I wished you could see the people that you're talking to. I have the ability of going to a place where there's thousands of people to see me. You don't have that ability. You don't know how many people's lives you're touching every week. It's wonderful.
Well, and thank you for saying that. I have to tell you something. This show is on hiatus. This is my last show at this time, and it is something that was a tough decision. I hope to stay in touch with people through other social media, and I will put some things out on YouTube. But I felt really called to take a break and do some of my other personal work and some writing that I'm trying to do. So there is a little bit of a melancholy feeling about that when you say that, and there is kind of a sentimental feeling that you would be the person, because at the time we made this to do this show, I didn't know that. So it's on hiatus at this time after we say goodbye. So
wow.
So
well, there will be people all over the world who will remember you and still follow you, and And I'm one of them. I'm one of them. You were my student, but you have become a spiritual master, and you have saved me, and I will always, always appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so glad. I like you, I also pray to be of service every day, and I live every day as if it's my last, and relish the moments. We spend so much time in our day so easily thinking about what we've got to do, or something from yesterday, or something coming up, and we can miss this beautiful moment that's right here, right now. And it's all there is.
Yeah. I think for me, one of the greatest tools, I guess you could call it tools, that helps me stop being trapped by the dance of this illusory life that's going on around me is to learn how to be in my heart instead of my head. The brain is an amazing thing. The brain has like 2 million billion calculations a second going on. It's got more, the synaptic gaps that are going on and are more than the particles in the known galaxy. The human brain is the most spectacular of all creations, and yet it's a computer. It's not a being, it's a computer. The being of who we are is in our hearts, and there are 40,000 neurons in the heart that are sending messages to the brain. There are more messages going from the heart to the brain than there are from the brain to the heart. The heart is the leader. The brain is supposed to be the servant of the heart, not the master of the heart. So when we learn neurons and those synaptic gaps and that mind that's in our heart, the difference is that the heart knows. The brain has to figure it out, but the heart knows. When you were a child, when I was a child, and I would say something and people would say, how do you know that? And they would be a little upset that I would know that, and they were adults and they had just figured it out maybe. It was because I didn't have to figure it out, because all knowledge is available to everyone all the time through their heart. Whatever you need is coming to you from Holy Spirit, from Great Spirit, in through your heart channel at all times. But we have to fight the urge. We have to fight the habit of constantly being in our brains and trying to figure it out, analyze it, work it out.
Yes.
And in the heart, there's forgiveness, there's understanding, there's healing, there's love, and we're then guided. We let go, and we let ourselves be guided by God into the life that we're supposed to live, into the unique individual purpose that we're here to serve.
Absolutely. Amen to all of that. I think there is so much, there's so much noise that goes on in and around people. And I've also seen an evolution, though, because I can remember in the 70s, with visualization, and people say, well, you have to, it was like they would describe it, seeing it in your mind. And I was like, I can't do that, but I can feel it. So I would feel my visualizations, and yes. That's how I would do it. But the funny thing is, back then I thought, well, I don't do it the way I'm supposed to, but it works. And I would do it. And then if it didn't work in my heart, I would say, well, you didn't really want that. It wasn't necessary, but I would just feel my way. And then, I don't know, some hop and a skip and a jump through time. Now we got to feel it. If you're going to visualize it, you can't just put it in the head. You've got to feel it. In other words, we finally, as a collective, are starting to move towards that heart centered in the value in it. I heard something that made me think of when people say to me, well, how do you know, like, you have someone with you? My mom or my dad, or with someone like your Gary, they're around. How do you know? And I said, well, it's like, how do you know that you love someone? It's the same kind of feeling. It's a knowing. No one could tell you, really, describe love from the place of you knowing. It's indescribable.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely, it's a wonderful thing when Einstein and Niels Bohr and the physicists got together and discovered what we now call subatomic reality or quantum physics, the action and interaction and behavior of subatomic particles, which have mass but little or no matter. Einstein just called them tendencies to be, and everything that we know about physical nature, the way things act and react with each other in physical nature, none of that is true in subatomic reality. Everything acts differently. It acts in ways that we don't understand. We just can't understand it, and so physicists and scientists had to try to think of not of new things, but think in a new way. And what happens when we think about the word love is that we think of it as I love you or you love me, or I'm in love, or I love my dog, or I love this new car, or love. But love is the energy of God, the presence and the energy of God in all places, at all times, forever and ever and ever. It's totally, every tree that grows is love. Every fiber of my being is love. Every cell is love. Everything is love. And when we are love, when we don't try to give love, but be love, then we are in God. God is in us, and we are one. We are the Christ. We are the Buddhas. We are living the purpose we came here to live. But you're so right. When I am doing things in channeling, when I'm talking to large audiences and I never use an outline, I'm channeling the stuff that's coming through me. It's not me, and it's not from me.
And where'd you go again? I can't, well, we've lost Bob again for a second. So, but he's still there. How interesting. Well, I do want to take this time to say to the listeners that I've been so grateful that you spent time with me and listened to me and brought me into your ears and your hearts. And I've enjoyed every single guest that I've had and every single moment that we've had together. And I do hope that you will stay in touch with me on my YouTube channel or through other social media means. And I don't know where the road leads after that, but I do hope we'll stay in touch. And I would also encourage you to check out the many lovely shows on this network. I love this network. It's fabulous. We still don't seem to have Bob back. So if you're back,
I'm here,
Bob, you're here.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes,
oh,
we can hear you. So that's perfect timing, because I wanted to say the community that you have created at Bellingham Unity, I walked in there and I just felt this love, this incredible love. What a community. If, this is my Northwest home. It's so beautiful. So if anybody's in the area visiting, or if anybody is in the area, please check out Unity of Bellingham, and there's classes that you teach there as well. Yes.
We teach classes continually, and also our Sunday services, which I give, are streaming from unitybellingham.org. unitybellingham.org. If you go to that website, you can go to media and live streaming, and you can see those, or you can see any of my older talks on YouTube. They're all on there.
Oh, fabulous. So you don't even have to live in Bellingham to listen to this wonderful man.
I so appreciate you. And I send my blessings out to all of you out there around the world. Keep the faith. Know that good things are happening. Don't believe the news. Good things are happening. We're winning. We're winning the fight. Just know we are, and stay happy.
Yeah, because it's so important right now that to choose to say I'm gonna stay in this loving vibration. We need all of us to say it. I'm not saying that we might not feel compassion for other things, but we can't let it drain us. We have to, if you can't do something about it, then don't let it drain your energy. So it's so very important. And I look forward to the next time I'm back here in Bellingham. I hold you and all of those at Bellingham Unity deep in my heart. I was so welcomed, so loved, and I felt so grateful to be of service there. Are you there, Bob?
I am here. I'm just sort of spellbound by the touching feeling of your heart when you're talking to these folks. It's just beautiful, and I just do hope they will stay in touch with you. This lady is a medium, and there's a lot of people that pretend to be mediums, and they have their crystal balls and their shawls over their heads or whatever. This lady has one foot in the spirit world, and she's an absolute channel of light between the two of us, and we need her in our lives.
Thank you so much. All right.
Love you.
Love you too. Love to all of you there. Thank you to our wonderful producer. Much love to everybody at OMTimes. I'm going to go cry a tear now.